Thank you. And they're still
Hey,
recording. Are good to go.
thanks. Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm not able to make in person, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk here. So this is really a complement to that talk, and I'll primarily just be focusing on non-real-time data, and it's then available in Alaska through AVO. So kind of an overview of what I'll talk about today. Definitely need to go over this figure that you've seen at least 4 times now, but really there's probably already know this as well, but this wealth of geophysical data in Alaska, we really always say that we have a data-rich region with a lot of unanswered, questions and data sets that are ready for people to look at and for new techniques. So, yeah, hopefully people take advantage of that. So today I'll be talking about the kind of available non-real-time geodetic, seismic, and infrasound data, through AVO. Ronnie contributed some geodesy slides that I'll do my best to present. And then I'll kind of end with some data, opportunities at selected volcanoes and past episodes of Unrest, but there are many more that I will talk about. So going to non-real-time geodesy. So this is a map of the campaigns that have been done, sorry, GPS campaigns that have been done in the Aleutian arc. So the ones in black are kind of, done in the past. You can see most of the dates for these are really, around kind of 20 years or longer. I think what's notable, the ones here in red, that these are the more recent campaigns. We'll show an example here in a second, and just by having a couple, um, different data points, you can do some really interesting modeling, kind of complement some of the other data sets out there. So there's some, I guess, to highlight too. There's some work planned at Augustine this year, and last year there was work done at Redoubt and Beniaminoff. So here's an example of some campaign work. This is at Fisher Caldera on Unimak Island. So there was some campaign work done in 99 to 2001, and then again in 2021. So on the left, this is a plot of the velocities, vertical and horizontals. And then on the right, you can see the time series there. And Ronnie mentioned this a little bit in his talk yesterday, and it was covered in a recent paper by Mario and Greta. But again, just with these two data sets, you can essentially do some really interesting modeling and interpretations that are helpful. So I think there's opportunities to do more of this work. One thing that's really had huge advances recently at AVO is SAR and INSAR processing. So I want to highlight that and talk about what's available and what's being done. So for SAR and INSAR, most of this is based on the Sentinel-1 data, assuming or hopefully when NISAR launches that be processing that as well. So definitely anticipating that. The repeat interval is 6 to 12 days. The data is open and available. I think something that's been really useful for the processing done with this is taking advantage of existing infrastructure. A lot of this is cloud-based work done by the Alaska Satellite Facility that Ronnie and team were able to leverage and then build off of, and then to display and allow people to analyze and download the data through the AVO Geodesy web interface that was just mentioned. More recently, there's been some good collaborations between the geodesy groups at the across the USGS Volcano Science Center to process additional SAR data and integrate that into these tools. And I think that's going to be something that we're already starting to see and will be really useful going forward. And then also recently, Ronnie and Franz Meyer got a NASA project funded to expand and further operationalize some of the processing. So I think that will be something to watch in the years to come. A great example of the INSAR processing people are probably familiar with was Mount Edgecumbe. So this is a wrapped phase interferogram. You can see Edgecumbe is this beautiful bullseye that's deforming here. So we noticed some seismic unrest at Edgecumbe and kind of trying to figure out what was going on. But really it was incredibly useful to get this INSAR derived deformation really within a span of hours that it's kind of the smoking gun that we had magma rising and deformation going on. And this was done again using those kind of tools that were already in place, and I think it's just been expanded on since. So the current, processing done at AVO, these like blue rectangles here, there's 35 different frames across the arc. There's already over 18,000 interferograms, 100 time series, 4,000 amplitude images using different satellites. The processing is done using, Jupyter notebooks that are available for people, and you can explore all this data in the interactive web interface Ronnie mentioned a minute ago. Here's an example of that. This is for Okmok, displaying the INSAR-based deformation here on the left, along with the GNSS velocity vectors. What this allows you to do when you kind of browse around on this, you can just like highlight a certain point and then click on it, and then it plots the velocity. That's what's being shown on the right. So there's a lot of flexibility, and to kind of play around and explore and see what's going on. So far, what's been done, or this, recently, using these tools. So there was a really notable deformation at Eniakchak caldera recently. That's what's being shown kind of in the center here. Tanaga Takawonga had a seismic swarm and some dike-related deformation. It looks like a couple years ago as well. There was a long-duration seismic swarm and deformation at Trident volcano in 2023 as well. Currently, kind of what's being done at these places that experiencing unrest. So Spur, we get occasionally coherent interferograms, or kind of supplementing when possible. It's a lot of snow, so it's mostly incoherent, I think. And also the ongoing deflation at Great Sitkin. And then running this, these kind of interesting examples that have been discovered using INSAR. And some of these places, like Alaska, we don't have ground-based sensors there. We don't know a lot of what's going on, but I think there's some probably really interesting things to look at there. So these are some opportunities that Ronnie mentioned or put down here. So Katmai, there's always a lot going on at Katmai. I think it's relatively unexplored. So take a look at that. Viniaminov has these short-term deformation characteristics. And then kind of from a more processing standpoint, with INSAR is disentangling any sort of near surface processes versus, what might be magmatic deformation. And then of course, thinking about offshore observations that can supplement what we can do on land. So with that, I'm going to move to seismic and infrasound. A lot of this has already been covered, so I won't go into it in much detail, but talking about the non-real-time seismic data for AVO, I wanted to show, how the networks kind of evolved over time. So this plot in the upper left are the number of stations that were installed per year. So this is when they were first established. So you can see the seismic network, we have 191 stations currently, and it's been, installed over, 30 years. And so people should keep that in mind as they're looking at the data. There's this kind of discontinuous network. It probably hasn't all existed that duration. But it is a really nice historical data set, and with a lot of seismicity. On the right is that same data just plotted, across the arc. So this is the installation year for these stations. You can see we have a pretty good station density around, a lot of these volcanoes. And again, many of those have been installed for a lot of years. As John mentioned, the data are available at the Earthscope DMC. The metadata is generally accurate, and it's easily accessible via OpsPy and other tools. Definitely want people to be aware of, what goes into, maintaining the seismic data and the data quality. And, there may be some issues with the data, and there may be some outages. And I think we all know this, looking at geophysical data, but I think that problem is particularly relevant in Alaska. So this is an example from a station on Mount Edgecombe, ED and W, where if you're looking at the noise plot here on the right, at these shorter periods, there's this kind of increase in short period noise. And, if you talk to the people who installed it, they're like, yeah, we had to install it in this bog. And it's basically a seismometer, swimming in mud, which created a lot of noise. And you wouldn't necessarily know this just looking at the data. So, if you have some questions or some doubt about, the data quality, we highly encourage you to reach out to AVO. Moving on to infrasound, John talked about the network as well. One thing I think is probably obvious, but we don't have such a long history and long time series. So this is the similar plot of how the stations were installed. as a function of time. The vast majority of the stations were installed over the past 5 years. And we have this, really nice, I think, mix of, single sensors and arrays deployed across the arc. And a lot of, or almost all of the single sensors are co-located with the seismometer, which facilitates, some research opportunities there. And the arrays are in the, generally more accessible regions. These data are all available from the EarthScope DMC, and really want to thank folks at AVO for this work in improving the accuracy of the metadata, because this has been a problem in infrasound for many years, but it's I think almost all accurate now, and it helps a lot looking at the data. Talking about infrasound data quality, anyone who's ever been to the Aleutians know that they're a very windy place. Wind noise is essentially the bane of infrasound, and this is a big problem for our network. We have stations in very exposed, windy locations, and often there's a lot of noise. So this is a plot on the right. This is a noise model of the stations deployed across Alaska. Basically just amplitude on the y-axis and frequency, and the blue curve is essentially the Alaska noise model, and it's generally very high in a lot of places. There are quiet times in quiet places, but I just want people to be aware that the noise is generally high with a lot of our stations, and to be aware of that as you analyze the data. So now I'll kind of finish up with a few data opportunities here. I think, it's been talked about with the AVERT project. So after this, collaboration, we have this really nice geophysical network there now. There's Seismic, infrasound, Geodetic, in addition to gas, webcam, IR, magnetometry data. It's been pretty quiet the past few years, but, it's just a matter of time before it starts to kind of get more active. And even during these quiet periods, Connor and others have looked at the data, and there's still some interesting things there. So I encourage people to reach out and look at that. So another opportunity is Garreloi volcano. There's always a lot of seismicity at Garreloi, essentially persistent seismicity with different types going on. We have occasional VTs. We have a lot of long period events, occasionally transitioning to tremor. So this is our ML tool here on the right, showing the seismicity classification. This was just last week at Garreloi for a 4-hour period, and we had near continuous tremor with these little bursts coming in as well. So I think understanding what's producing this tremor and what's producing these signals would be really interesting. There's also some gas work that's been done there to suggest shallow magma, but relatively little work has been done on the seismoacoustic network that's there. Another data opportunity is semi-Splotchnoi volcano. So this erupted kind of intermittently between 2018 and 2024. John Lyons just led a paper combining really nice multidisciplinary data set to better understand the signals and the spherotomagmatic activity. So I'm not going to go over this figure here, but I encourage folks to check out the paper and to think about how this data set can be leveraged to help understand what's going on with the volcano, because there's a lot of data, a lot of signals in there. So I think there's a lot of techniques and scientific questions that can be addressed there. Pavlov and Shishaldin, these were pointed out as targets for SC4D. These are two of our most frequently erupting volcanoes. They both now have seismic and infrasound networks locally on it. There's geodetic instruments on Shishaldin as well. I think people are aware, but in 2023 we had 13 explosive events at Shishaldin. On the right here, I'm showing a figure of the seismic amplitude over time for those 13 events, time aligned by the peak in seismicity. There's a lot of analysis still being done. We're writing up our results for this. Will be published in a special issue. There's also some pre-events work been done on Shishaldin as well. So I think a lot of scientific questions and nice data available here as well. Everyone's familiar with the Unrest and Mount Spur, but I think I just wanted to point it out as well. I think there's some opportunities to look at the data here, even if it doesn't erupt. So we're waiting to kind of see on that. So I will just I think people are aware with the background, but this is a figure showing the AVO color code on the top from late 2023 to now. Then looking at the earthquakes per week, the largest magnitude earthquake, and then the deformation. So thus far, there's been over 4,500 earthquakes, this kind of notable deformation. There's been, well observed, gas emissions and then superficial changes at the summit. So yeah, encourage people to, follow along with this and to take a look at the data sets as time. And then the last highlight, I think this was mentioned by John Power yesterday as well, but there's really, I think, a pretty amazing seismic catalog put together by AVO over many years. So this is a plot of the earthquakes per month with the unrest periods highlighted and the eruptions highlighted in red. Tons of earthquakes out there for people to look at and to both do, I think, scientific studies, on the quakes themselves, but also as John mentioned too, is new techniques, whether this is applying earthquake relocations or ML-based pickers, etc. I think there's really just a wealth of opportunities with this. So I'm trying to stay on time here. Just in conclusion, like I said, we have a data-rich region. We highly encourage people to use the data. There's a lot of episodes of Unrest and Eruption. It's been great strides in accurate metadata and making the data available to people. But with that, be aware of some of the challenges of operating stations and some issues that may be present, and AVO is here to help. So please reach out if you have questions. And yeah, so there's a lot of exciting opportunities. Thanks.
Any questions for David? Yep.
I guess it kind of ties in well with the GeoDiva stuff, but I know that internally, AVO and deployments have site reports for new installations, and you mentioned like it's really important to actually get in touch with people that have installed these to understand perhaps features you see at certain sites that are site specific. Is there any thoughts or plans about actually formally releasing site reports that give that basic information through a platform like GeoDiva?
Yeah, that's a good idea. A good question. I don't know the mechanism to release that. Like, I don't think you could, easily do that like at Earthscope or something, but maybe there's another way to make that information available to people, because yeah, I agree, sometimes has critical information on the data themselves. Other people may have ideas.
Any other ideas on that or questions? People are ready for coffee. Okay, well, everyone, we're gonna have a break now, let's say, because we were running a little late. Let's start at 45 again. All right, so